Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. And today what we're going to tackle are the Minotaurs. And I've got to admit I don't really know a huge amount about this particular chapter. I know that there's quite a few fans of them out there. This has been quite regularly requested. And I figured, well, here's a nice brassy sort of armor color that will work with a lot of different things. In particular, if you wanted to paint the Gyron Guard, say you're doing Stormcast Eternals, I think this method would work very well for them as well. If you do know the Minotaurs better than I do, and I've got some details in the wrong place or what have you, please be kind. But I'm pretty sure I've got most of this right. So all of the paints will be linked in the description below. Let's get started. So it might not be much of a surprise, but we're going to start from a primer of Retributor Armor Spray. Now you can do this straight from the can onto the plastic. It is a primer, you don't have to do like a black or white first, and this is what you'll end up with. We are going to go quite a bit darker than this, but this is a pretty decent base coat. If you do want to turn around and do a coat of Retributor armor from the pot over the top of this just in case, that's up to you, but I really don't think we're going to need it, especially considering what we've got coming up. Grab yourself the biggest brush you have, and we're going to put Agrax Earthshade all over the entire miniature. I'm getting that all over my fingers too. Just take your time, work it into all the recesses. Really go ham with this, alright? Anywhere that it's going to pull up, like on his legs for example, just make sure while this is still wet that you're moving it and sort of preventing it from gumming up like that. So, whole model, and then we're going to let that dry, probably for about 20 or 30 minutes. Now, as you'll see, that dulls down that gold quite a bit, and it loses some of the warmth, which is kind of ideal. I tend to see the Minotaurs as having quite a dark, almost brassy kind of finish. So that's what we're going to play into. Over here, I've got one of my little makeup brushes. These things are brilliant. Any old dry brush will do, though, if you happen to have one. And I've got some Sycorax bronze. What I'm going to do is put that down for a second, and let's just work some bronze into my brush here. And we are going to quite generously dry brush this fella. So let's take a look at his backpack here, for example, and we'll just drag our brush lightly across him like so. You'll notice it doesn't really change the tone very much, but it does give us slightly more bronzed, brassy color. So you can be, like I said, fairly generous with this. Just go around, dry brush your whole model in Sycorax bronze. Now, as I said, I've been quite generous with that, and all that I've really left behind is the shading that the Agrax Earthshade did on the armor. The color itself is now mostly Sycorax bronze, and I think that's pretty much spot on. Can be a little flat though. So what I've got, this is one of the Army Painter small dry brushes. I really like the wedge tip that these things have. And I've got some Necron Compound. And what we'll do is, kind of similar to my normal Space Marine painting technique, is we're just going to lightly dry brush some Necron Compound along any really hard edges to get a bit of shine there. So along, I might need a bit more paint there. Along the top of his helmet, any details which you would generally edge highlight, you can now get in there and just give them a quick flick with some Necron Compound. Now, wasn't that nice? Kind of a faded bronze effect and really easy to do. Total paint time, you're looking maybe about 5 to 10 minutes on each Marine, then details on the top. So speaking of details, we'll do some of his weaponry and any little metal bits. And for this I've got Iron Hand Steel. Since it came out, I don't think I've used Lead Belcher. Friendship ended with Lead Belcher. Now Iron Hand Steel is my best friend. We're going to go over all of the metallic details. Now I am going to paint his bolter casing in red later, but we'll find it much easier to come back and do that over silver rather than be really careful now. So just fill these areas in, and don't forget needlets like the little dealy boppers on his pack here too. Once that's had a couple of minutes to dry, we're going to get a little Basilicanum Grey. This is a contrast color. What this is going to give us is a really nice sort of smoky gunmetal effect. All we're going to do is just apply this straight over the metal. If you're careful, you can leave the brassy colour in behind for the, I guess, bullets in there. But just fill in all of the metalwork with some basilicanum grey. When it comes to little pipes and what have you, you might want to switch to a smaller brush. Now that nice smooth gunmetal effect I really like. I think that's great. What I've got now, let's get some Mephiston red and we'll fill in his shoulder pads. Now I have seen conflicting reports, let's say, on the subject of how these ought to be done. I'm painting them red because I think it looks the coolest. Those of you who know the chapter better than me will, make your own decisions on this. Once I've finished with a couple of coats of this on the shoulder pads, I'll do the same and I'll fill in his bolter casing with red as well. Now with those patches of red, there's a lot more life in the colour scheme, I think. I quite like how that looks. And the brightness of the red does serve to sort of visually dull down that brassy colour too. I really like that. What I'm going to do now is actually finish off the rest of the details just off camera. I've painted leather and what have you a lot. For the leather details like his belt and gear, I'm probably going to use a dark brown, maybe dryad bark or similar. I see dark brown as being most common, and a little bit of black to fill in his armour joints. Now I did elect in the end to get a little bit of Wild Rider red and highlight the edges of his bolter casing. I think that looks cooler. And his eyes are done, I did a little slash of white and then some, Flesh Tearers red straight into the socket over the top of that. It gives you a nice quick, very easy sort of glow method for that. Now what we'll do is just go ahead and pop a base on him and see what it looks like all in context. Then at last, with his base applied, our Minotaur is complete. Now if you wanted to, you could, take some time, maybe with a steady hand and a bit of patience, and paint on some chapter markings and, white details on the opposite shoulder pad. I think you're probably better off looking up maybe on Thingiverse, see if there are any STL files available for 3D printed pads, or check out Shapeways for something similar if you want an easier option than painting that bullhead on however many Marines you're looking to do. Now, this was actually pretty interesting. Like I said, I don't really know a huge amount about the Minotaurs themselves, but painting them doesn't have to be a challenge. I think if you did want that darker finish, a second Agrax Earthshade is the way to go, but otherwise I'm quite pleased with that result. So as always, thank you very much to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, as well as all the patrons who keep me ticking over in paint and glue, including producers Alan Nuttall, Ben Hicks and Kyrie Crawford. Thank you very much one and all. Any questions, feel free to drop them in the old comment box below. My Twitter and Facebook are both linked there too. So thank you very much for your time, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.